welcome you to this first podcast of my blog, translatorthoughts.com. Today I'm going to interview a very experienced translator. Her name is Irene Cudich, and I would really like to welcome her. So, welcome, Irene.
Thank you. Welcome to.
I would like to start with very simple questions just to understand who you are and how you became a translator. You told me you did a bilingual primary school, so you started to speak English very, very young. I would like to ask you, is it this that gave you the first interest for English and for languages, or is something that you developed later?
Well, I started learning English at 5, playing. I think I began to feel and enjoy my interest for English at that time. I felt attracted to those games.
And what has been your motivation for choosing translation at university? Were you thinking about building a career, or were you just following your passion? In other words, I'm asking you, how did you know that you wanted to become a translator?
Well, that's a funny story. I had been an excellent English pupil at school, but a very bad one in all the other subjects. So I chose the career that seemed to be the easiest for me. No passion, no call, just not having to study too much. That was very strict admission exam in the university. This was in March 1973 at the Instituto Superior de Lenguas Vivas de Buenos Aires. Only 40 persons passed the test, and I was one of them. And being part of that group made me feel very happy, and gradually and slowly I started to feel that passion. Before attending the Lenguas Vivas, many times I cannot say worked, but performed interpretation tasks without knowing what I was doing. When some people from the US or Europe came to Argentina, I was 17. I even traveled to Europe with my older brother as his interpreter. For me, translation and interpretation are absolutely tied together.
Wow, that's very interesting. I also would like to know, why did you choose the freelance career instead of looking for a job as employee in a company?
Well, life sometimes takes you through a road that leads you to be this or that. Fortunately, my road was being a freelancer. I could not be an employee. I love to work at night, no noises. I can concentrate better. I can accommodate my deadlines better. And I think I could not stand a boss telling me what to do. Being a freelancer is much more demanding because you are your own boss.
How did you find your first client, and how did you find your second?
Well, my best friend, Maria del Carmen Gonzalez, who had studied with me since primary school, and another classmate, went from publishing company to publishing company offering us services. Most of them told us no, thank you. And finally, Editorial Médica Panamericana gave us a book. Imagine a book translated by 3 News. It must have been well done. I have not reread it. That was 35 years ago. Because they gave us a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth one. Of course, paying us peanuts. But we thought we were the best translators of Argentina. We also published some ads offering translation services. We got a lot of work, but when the ads bill came, the income resulted in red figures.
I see, I can imagine how expensive it could be at that time. So how did you promote yourself at the beginning? You were sending CVs to agencies or following other strategies? How did you market yourself in a way?
Well, visiting publishing companies, agencies, giving my visiting card to any human being I met. Slowly but surely, my contacts began to give me work.
Um, did you think about what kind of niche you wanted to focus on, or let's say it happens by chance?
At first, it was medicine, which I specialize in now. Then it was engineering, also one of my assets. And then, except for legal and financial material, all kind of stuff. You name it.
And after university, did you follow other courses like private courses or from translators associations?
I had a teacher in my university course, which was my mentor. She's dead now. Noemi Rosenblatt, whom really was the one who taught me to translate. She conveyed the passion, the pleasure, and the fun of technical and scientific translation to me. After graduating, I attended 2 postgraduate practical workshops with actual translations. I learned more there than in my whole career. I still think of her. Well, life is like that.
What's the aspects of your job that you enjoy more?
I love the challenge a text poses to me. Trying to find the right expression makes me happy after picking my brain. That is why I chose not to be a sworn translator. A contract is a contract. A power of attorney is the same as another, with minor changes. But a technical or a literary translation is there telling you, come on, how would you translate me?
Yeah, of course, I understand exactly what you say. Um, During your life, you translated more than 100 books. What are the positive and negative differences, in your opinion, between translating a book and translating, let's say, documents?
I have to clarify that I don't translate documents, nor legal nor financial material. That's boring and I really know a thing about it. I studied to be a technical, scientific, and literary translator, and life has led me in that way. So I would say translating books is 100% positive for me, although I did not translate many literary books, but mainly non-fiction ones.
How did you select the book to translate? Were you following your personal interests?
My dear, a freelance translator cannot afford to select the books to translate. If you like the subject, much the better. But there are issues I take into account. I will not translate something that goes against my personal principles, nor books or material that surpasses my understanding. Once I had to give back a book to a publishing agency that gave me to translate. It was on philosophy. It was Greek to me. I did not understand a thing. I think a translator has to know his limitations, but they did not understand my attitude and never ever again gave me a word.
When did you start to work as interpreter? And what was your first work?
I started working as an interpreter not knowing I was an interpreter, as I told you before. But I think you mean a simultaneous or consecutive interpreter. It was a hallmark in my career. I had a customer, Edward Hartman, who got in touch with me for the translation of his book into Spanish, How to Successfully Implement TPM, Total Productive Management, in a non-Japanese plant. It was an industrial engineering. The book was bestseller. He came to Argentina to give seminars based on the books. We became friends. He said no one knew about TPM after him better than me. So he convinced me to try and get into the interpretation booth for 5 minutes and see how I felt. I was terrified. Of course, I knew the subject inside out, and he spoke much slower than he usually did. Everybody was involved in this, and I got cheers when I went out. So I passed the test, and I became his personal interpreter. We traveled to all Latin American countries. It was my golden age as an interpreter and earned good money. And even to Pamplona, Spain, which was not a very good experience because Spanish from Spain is quite different from Latin American neutral Spanish. I should have known better. But I have to say that Ed Hartman was my mentor who opened the door for me to be the interpreter for many other lecturers in Argentina.
Do you enjoy more written translation or interpreting, and why?
There is no question about it. I enjoy much more translating than interpreting. I work at home, I have a studio with all I need, and some evenings I stay up all night working if I have an urgent assignment, or if I can't sleep. Because for me, translating is a pleasure besides being a job. Interpreting stresses me. You have to study the subject of the interpretation beforehand. The lecturer always makes a couple of jokes which you do not translate well into Spanish, and he or she is waiting for the audience to laugh. Interpreting involves three brain simultaneous activities: listening, translating, and talking. That is why it is performed by two people. But you have to pay attention when the other person takes the mic in case he or she coughs, loses the thread of the dissertation, or something like that. You must be there to help him, and it is reciprocal.
Yeah, I know it's very challenging task actually, much more than translation. Um, what kind of interpreting have you been performing during your career? Simultaneous, consecutive, face to face?
A lot of simultaneous and face-to-face. I really don't like consecutive. It is much more stressing for me.
Um, what are the aspects you enjoy more in interpreting?
To be honest, the pay. No, no, really, to be complimented for the job.
Um, what do you do if, for example, you don't understand the word, a sentence, or if the speaker has a very strong accent that affects your comprehension?
Oh, I try to close a sentence that makes some sense, and please, no Australians, no Eastern speakers. I had to turn down some assignments because of that.
What advices would you give to someone who wants to start a career in translation or interpreting?
When you graduate, You think you know it all. That is not true. A translator must recognize what she cannot do. Practice is a must. Experience is a must. But I insist, don't think you can translate or interpret every material that falls in your hands. Say no when it surpasses your knowledge.
That's a very good advice, and I would really like to thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I hope to speak with you again.
Oh, that's a pleasure for me.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.